Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Back in 1987, when I was completing my training in the Bonny method of guided imagery in music, I wrote a paper about the power of relationships for personal transformation. Now, my whole life has been devoted to the collective power of transformation. So when during a chance conversation with Patricia Albere, we began to talk about what was possible for humanity, well, you can guess, I immediately invited her to have a conversation with me here on Wisdom Talk Radio. Hi, I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and founder of what is now known as the Baca Institute. Discover your creative advantage by taking the Creative Innovator Quiz. Find out your creative innovator style so that you can open your creative flow and make everything in life easier. For visionaries, innovators, company founders, and product designers, optimize your ability to create more in less time while enjoying every minute. My guest today, Patricia Albere, is at ground zero of an evolutionary stream of spiritual awakening, where we learn to go beyond individual psychology and transformation into a new space of mutual intersubjective awakening. She is the founder of the Evolutionary Collective, originator of the Mutual Awakening Practice, an internationally known contemporary spiritual teacher, and best-selling author of Evolutionary Relationships, Unleashing the Transformative Power of Mutual Awakening. Her unique discovery of the essential components that create an awakened we space is transforming our understanding of what is possible in the space between us. Welcome, Patricia. I am thrilled to have you with us today and able to continue our conversation.
Yeah.
Kind of barely started, but because I said, no, wait, I want to do it here.
No, actually, I look forward to having, it's a public conversation, but it's it's a public-private conversation about what we both care about.
So, Patricia, well, the little bit I know about you, I know that you have had quite a life story. So what's the story behind the story? Like, what was the longing that first ignited in your own heart?
Interesting. So I've had a long journey of teaching and working with people. As you know, I met Werner Erhard, who was the founder of the Landmark Forum, and all of the coaching, the various people who created schools, et cetera, when I was 18, 1971, which was a very long time ago, and had the great privilege, really, of being in a situation where I could teach a few hundred people every night of the week, for about 12 years and speak in front of large groups in various cities. And so I've seen the power of transformation, and you and I are a part of the Transformational Business Council, Evolutionary Business Council. And so there's, I honor, the power of transformation and individual transformation for humanity. But about 14 years ago, 2 years before I created the Evolutionary Collective, I kind of got to the end of my own teaching with transformation. I'd worked with over 200,000 people in my lifetime, and I was at the beginning of something, and I just was kind of like, okay, so, I was like sort of drumming my spiritual hands on the table going, okay, so, where is there a new edge? Is there a new beginning? Is there something that's starting that we can barely hear? And so I stopped teaching for 2 years, and I was living in Boulder, and I just, there was Naropa. I mean, there were all these different friends in different areas. And
where I used to teach.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, which is a phenomenal, amazing college, but university. But I just was like, okay, where is it? And as I was waiting, what had happened to me 12 years before that, when I was in my 30s, I had met a very beautiful spiritual German man who was 8 years younger. Mm-hmm. Kind of looked like Jesus. He had, at least the way we think Jesus looks. Very much my type. Mm-hmm. And was deeply a mystic. I mean, he was no kidding. Like he woke up meditating, and he was meditative when he ate his eggs in the morning. He never moved from that connection. Mm-hmm. And I was just madly in love with him, and vice versa. And so what happened was, in this love affair and this level of consciousness that we entered into, my heart was very developed from all the work I had done, mm-hmm. and all the people I had loved. And his awareness was so acute. And we only wanted to be close. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up having that very, twin soul, whatever you want to call it, but we really were one. Mm-hmm. And we entered into that, like every day was a spiritual journey and awakening, because we were so in that beloved state.
Mm-hmm. And it was a spiritual awakening every day, and it was always new. That's the nature of this journey, isn't it?
Yeah. It was like, we never watched a football game, mm-hmm. We never sort of went normal. So it was interesting. And I loved that, it was like, I was like in heaven, yeah. being with him in that way, but we were taken. And what started to happen was we had what I would call now a mutual awakening. So like someone can become awakened, have a certain level of realization in a non-dual way. Mm-hmm. We had an awakening that wasn't non-dual, but it was an awakening that I still, I didn't have words for. Mm-hmm. And it was it was like it was moving without us doing anything for a number of years. Like it was like, it was like unraveling us, and it was mm-hmm. exquisite. And he died, so he ended up, asking me to marry him. So, long story, but he ended up being in a car accident, was brain injured, and eventually died. Mm-hmm. So I was left with this horror of not only losing, your beloved, the man that you love, mm-hmm. but I was in the shared consciousness state. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he's ripped away from me. And, it just took me years to just even navigate any of it. Do you know what I mean? It was a very difficult navigation. So I never thought, I was always like, what the hell, I wouldn't have traded it for anything in the world, but I was also in this ongoing process of trying to navigate being an individual again in a world that didn't function the way we did.
So let me ask you, that's such a huge thing. Was there any part of you at that time that was able to or aware of being able to connect with him from the other dimensions?
I could, but he was in a very hurt place. Mm. And so there was all that as well. Do you know what I mean? Like he had been brain injured very badly, mm-hmm. and he took his life at the end.
Yeah.
He was beating his head against, it was really not good. So, so I couldn't even go there to mm-hmm. feel mm-hmm. I was with him.
Yes, of course.
So regardless of all of that had happened, and I'd found my way, kind of to at least a place of, I could have the open wound and still be in my life and experience the kind of love and connection that I have for people. But then at this time where I stopped teaching, what came through was all of a sudden it was like, this is the time, Patricia. So the time for the multiple beloveds.
Yes.
The beauty of the two of us, yes, of course. Is that compelling? Absolutely. But that isn't something humanity's going to step into. It's extreme.
And it wasn't like an end point for you.
Well,
that's what
I couldn't. I have a big imagination. Okay, I can imagine possibilities for days, and mm-hmm. I could not imagine what was more than that.
Yes. Yeah.
I really couldn't. I could not go past it. because it was like being with God. It was like being with the divine as your lover, as you inside, like that whole thing. And so I could feel him also on the other side eventually being annoyed with me. Because he was kind of like, because I was just missing him, and I was being very roomy-ish,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like he was drumming his hands, kind of going, "Come on, come on, come on!" And then
because he was waiting for you to come.
But it was a timing. The thing was, I realized that when I started this, I was right when humanity has 7.7 billion people. Our individual practices and processes have gone to a peak of, understanding. There's a myriad of ways that people can find their way. I mean, it's so rich, and our individuation is so extreme. It's even to the point of, Pandora knows what I want to listen to. I mean, it's kind of in every way, our individuation is at a peak. The attunement to me and how I want to be.
As if it's all about just me.
Right, but it's kind of great. I mean, we've actually gotten to a place of, being Neanderthals, and now we are, like this. But I realized, like, all of a sudden I realized the multiple beloveds, there was something about what Peter and I, as two unenlightened people, had entered into. I thought, well, what if I can get 10 people to turn towards each other, not as lovers, but in this way? What could the divine do with us?
Exactly.
It was more than just for the moment. It was like, what if we build this circuitry, this sort of celestial architecture for something greater?
Yeah.
And that's what got me to start. Go ahead.
Well, that's why I was so excited to speak with you, because that is what we spent over 20 years doing, that there was a collective of us that were working with a particular teacher, receiving energies and connecting as that collective force, and building those celestial interwoven energetics so that we could do
with each other.
Yeah. So,
and going beyond separation with each other.
Exactly. And that is so
that's rare. Most spiritual groups connect this way. And they're open, they love each other, but they're connecting from, through the saint pathway.
So let me
That's quite different. That's quite different.
So let me ask you about that, because that's exactly was a question that was occurring to me, because there's the intimacy of the relationship between self and presence, that relationship as above, so below kind of thing.
Yes.
But then there's that collective force when each person has that connection and it is alive and well and thriving. And that's not easy.
Yes, of course, right.
And then you come together, and then you have the two or more, when two or more are gathered in my name, when each of the individuals are connected. So what is the relationship between, or the relationship between that connection with presence, the intimacy between two people, let's say, or even a group of people. But then there's a relationship between the two. And that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fairly, in a way, an advanced question, but I'm up for it. Totally. So one of the things that I've just been teaching has to do with these thresholds of unity. The individual threshold, which is the one that we have been in for thousands of years. So there is an incarnational loop. We come as an individual soul, we connect with the earth, we connect with our incarnation, we sometimes bring other lifetimes and stuff with us. And and the connection with the divine is this way, is an individual connection. Now, it doesn't mean that when I'm connected with the divine and I'm with you and you're connected, that there isn't something that opens. But it's still the individual threshold. And if you think all religion, the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, the various gorgeous awakened beings that we can look to as luminaries that have kind of shown in that, we assume from the individual pathway, we are on this journey and I'm going to say something fairly heretical, so, just whatever, go for it, is a friend of mine was at the Pope's Summer Palace with the Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, the luminaries, amazing, for real luminaries from around the world. So excited, couldn't wait, was like, oh my God, something amazing is going to happen. And he went, and he's a beautiful teacher, and he said everybody was lovely, but nothing really happened.
Yeah.
This is the individual threshold. So in the individual threshold, each person gets up and they share with others their transmission. The transmission brings a certain unity, right? Kind of. But nothing new gets created.
Yeah.
The second threshold, which is entirely new, it is not something that's been going on for thousands of years. So this next threshold, which has to do with the wheel of time, like right now, is a different time than when Jesus walked the earth or Buddha walked the earth. All the religions started 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, all of them.
Yes.
Okay. So it was the axial period. There's a certain period of trying to rise up from our survival instincts and our, hormones driving us into, violence and sex and, survival. This next threshold. So instead of this, the awakening goes like this. It's like a lemniscate. And
like this, you need to describe it since they can't see us.
They can't see us, right? Okay. So it's like an infinity symbol. Okay. Yeah. So what happened with Peter and I, and what I've been doing since with people, is that when people come from not the soul, which is in the first threshold, not your essential self, not your authentic self, not your spark, but there is in fact a deeper origin. I call it the origination point. I don't care what you call it, but there's something that's never been in time, and yet it is very precise, and it is very unique, and it is very much you. That when two beings connect from there, we go to absolute oneness. It's almost like making a baby. Like we literally go into oneness, and the connection with the divine is opened dimensionally, so that something starts to happen way bigger than the exquisiteness of what happens between us.
Yes. Or the exquisiteness of what happens with small self with capital S self.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do with that. Right. It's kind of like,
we have that. We have to have that intact, or
no, here's the thing. No, not actually. Okay. This is what's kind of radical, but interesting, is that the origination point, when people come from there, even if they haven't done tons of work healing here, which is helpful, they can find the connection.
Yes.
And because think about it, with 7.7 billion people, and there are new babies coming, there are new beings coming on the planet that probably aren't necessarily going to be born into the same incarnational loop.
Right. And they don't need to do the healing. And most of us don't. Many of us don't need to do the healing.
They might be lifted.
We've done it.
Yeah, or there's some new wave that may start to lift that isn't based there. Like we've been based. We're like hybrids.
Yes.
We're a little bit of both, right? Maybe. Is that when that connection, there's a weave of unity. There's a embodied kind of unity that starts to come online. And it's very new. It's not something that's always here. We're just finding it. It's not that. It's not like this has already been here and now we're just discovering it. It's literally coming in now.
It's a new evolution, isn't it?
It really is. And there's people that talk about the ninth wave and different things. They're saying divinity and love, instead of witnessing consciousness, is actually a different kind that's coming in to begin to scoop us into a different possibility. And the kind of war that's going on right now, in our world of light and dark, the light and dark is like kind of going crazy at the moment. It feels like, it feels very extreme. And it's not it's going to come apart. Like where there's something pulling us to a different possibility. And that's the second threshold. And then there are thresholds beyond that. But what I teach, like what I ended up teaching is how do you move into the second threshold? What is spiritual practice? There's like a half-hour practice that actually lets people start to locate from origin point with the other, with what else happens. And then from there, there's more, obviously.
So my sense about this time has been that there's so much that's being unearthed and it's wonderful because that's what's needed. What's your sense of how the energy, how you're experiencing the energy in terms of that, in terms of the way in which we're being moved into this new place, the way we're being offered something brand new? That seems very clear.
Well, the piece that's interesting, I find, is with being individuated comes separation.
That's beautiful. Yes.
So you have the beauty of it, but you have the reality of separateness. And the particular paradigm that we're still in, even if I, like with you and I, if you go into your subjective connection, you're inside with your divinity and I'm inside with mine, we're still kind of separate.
Right.
So no matter what, like the separateness in the world, the loneliness, all of the issues of separation and divisiveness,
it's kind of like over there and me somewhere else, and
the projections,
at other.
No, and the whole emphasis on my subjective experience, like I'm experiencing this, and I feel this, and I know that, and this is my body, and I feel grounded, and I can feel my perineum, and all of that stuff, right? I wouldn't dare. I mean, you would get mad at me if I said I can feel your subjective experience. I can feel it from the inside. You'd be like, well, wait a minute, probably not. Probably I'm the only one over here, or you maybe not because you're unusual. But most people are so developed, and then you see in the world, everybody's in some kind of other. We're in so many separate worlds. We might as well be in hell. It's a kind of hell realm. Everybody's in.
It is a kind of hell.
It's a hell realm. It's like, and so to break the projections and the overemphasis of subjective sensing and knowing and thinking and how I feel, and then thinking, this is me as a New Yorker, thinking, you got to be crazy if you think that with all of that separation, that we're going to include each other and be inclusive and really work out our differences from being that separate. You got to be, never.
Yeah. It's a whole different thing that you're bringing forward.
It's like if we go underneath where there's no separation, where I don't even know what religion, I don't know your story, I don't know any of that, but we've literally connected from a place that feels more like home and more connected in love. Then you build that, then maybe we have a chance to work out what you feel, what I need. Do you know what I mean? Like the things that are still real as humans, maybe from that ground or that circuitry of connection.
Because
we have a better shot.
So my experience has been, and actually this is really very, oh my goodness, very present right now. My dearest friend of 42 years just passed. And and we have been with some others connected in this circuitry.
Yeah.
For a very long time. And I'm seeing how there's something about her having passed that is activating a different dimension of this circuitry.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it feels very real, very true. I don't understand it all yet. I know there's lots to evolve and unfold. So I'm looking at how those kinds of connections, that kind of connected circuitry, is what is here. I'm hesitating. It's what is here to change the world. what is here that can change the world, that can bring about that kind of heaven, heaven on earth. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And you developed it over time. There's two levels, I think, of this thresholds. So what you guys did was, as a group, it sounds like you were building the circuitry ongoingly. So you had a body of unity. Mm-hmm. That's the third threshold. There are other things that are necessary to have really that shared nervous system. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The second threshold is being able to go into that level of connection, right? With each other and with the divine, mm-hmm. and starting to open and build that so that you can access the energies that are coming. Do you know what I mean? That at least they're starting to lift. People are less obsessed with their issues, less obsessed with, having a fabulous life. I mean, it doesn't mean, we should have that, but there's something that gets lifted.
Yeah.
When we are together.
It's not about my personality.
Even your spiritual personality.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're fine. You're fine. Right. And let's get on with what we're here to do.
Yes. But that underlying matrix, which is we have to pay attention. If we don't do it, it's like if we don't have sex, the world will end. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. We know that. Now, that's not a problem because, there's a thing that's making everybody keep that going. But with this, mm-hmm. we are separate cells. And Teilhard de Chardin, who was the Jesuit priest, who I'm sure you've heard of, he talked about something called creative union. And creative mm-hmm. union is what allows molecules to become cells as they share characteristic energy. Mm. It's particular. It's not just anything. They share something, they become a molecule. Molecules share a characteristic energy, they become a cell. I don't know how it works, but mm-hmm. It goes up. But it's very particular. Humans, we're so busy being our single-celled selves. We think we're the end of the food chain. Except there's 7.7 billion of us.
Yeah.
You got to wonder, what is the characteristic energy that allows for this, that allows for you and I, when we share that, we become one. When we share that, we become one. If I share my story with you, no characteristic energy, no oneness. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If you listen to me empathetically and deeply, no oneness. If I share my darkest, if I share spiritual energy, no oneness necessarily. You're still over there and I'm over here. Mm-hmm. There's particular, when we share from that origin, from the nothingness, mm-hmm. the particular nothingness that we are, mm-hmm. boop, all of a sudden you have, the two molecules become a cell.
Yeah. So tell me.
And that's an exciting discovery, I think. That
is a huge.
And it's reliable.
Right. So that's what I want to ask you about.
It's reliable.
I think your mutual awakening process.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that have to do with awakening not only the collective, but also our individual potential? Because I think it's both.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's for a couple of different, it does, I do feel like it's a 21st century spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's eyes open, at least with two people. We have groups of people getting on Zoom, so we put them in pairs and then we work together. Uh-huh. And that's exciting. If you have 100 people and everybody's in pairs, like there's an energy together.
Oh, yes.
And I have a global practice platform so that once people learn how to practice, they can get on once or twice a day with people from all over the world and do this, mm-hmm. right? So you're like, woo, you're in it. But what were you asking? So the practice, the benefit, here's who it's for. Mm-hmm. People who have done their non-dual, they've done practices, mm-hmm. and they're just kind of like, if they tell the truth, they're a little restless for something more.
Right. They know there's something more.
You bring people together, and it's like if you could take the Dalai Lama mm-hmm. and Mother Teresa, if she was still alive, and have them do this practice, the room would explode. Mm-hmm. It would be like, oh, like you'd feel like the heavens open up, mm-hmm. which mm-hmm. is different if they stand next to each other.
Right.
There's something. So there's number one, those are people who are like kind of curious, like I want to be with people, but I don't want to just be with people in all the normal ways that I know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to just sit next to them and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
There's something. So the something is here. Okay. The second thing is there are people that don't really love meditating.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, you know, I mean, they're just kind of like, it's just that aloneness, that eyes closed has never quite done it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They feel like they should.
Right. No, I know, because I teach a way of meditating that does bring people together, and they go like, this is so different.
Yeah,
I spent 20 years in an ashram, and I never got to speak about my experience. I never got to have this kind of connectedness.
Yeah, so there are people that are more wired to be beloved.
Oh, that's
They're just more wired to be
beloved.
They are. You know, like there are desert people and there are garden people. You know, and I think the garden people are kind of like, I know I'm supposed to meditate, but you know, like it's not. And they do
there
this.
is that thing that's not right about it.
And there's something where they go, oh my God, I was made for this. Do you know what I mean? I was like, and they literally, the spiritual energies and openings and the multidimensional access and the quality of what that happens in them is incredible. Mm-hmm. The third thing is that it's a different brain state. So meditation tends to take you into delta theta. Mm-hmm. So you close your eyes, you're letting go. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't want to move. You know, if it's really good, you're kind of like, you know, you drop into a place that is just, you're gone, you know, like in the best of ways, you're there, but you're gone. And with this, it activates gamma. So you have eyes open, you're touching what you're experiencing with words and learning how to not do it from your conceptual mind. So right and left hemispheres are functioning and you're in high coherency. Mm-hmm. And there's this kind of love and joy and positivity and flow. So all those crazy athletes, you know, they do things they can't do, they go into high gamma frequencies.
Right, right.
So it's eyes open in flow, and it's literally wiring your brain differently so that you can be in a very profound, multidimensionally profound state with your eyes open while you're on your computer walking aroround.
Exactly. Because
I think
this is very practical.
It's very practical. Yeah. I mean, I keep wanting to get my hands on Google or somebody because I think, meditation is good so that they don't stress themselves out, but they should be in high gamma. Exactly.
So that's, you know, that's why I'm so excited. It's like I'm almost quivering here.
I feel the resonance between us. I do.
Because I've had that same feeling of, I want to get my hands. Google used to be a customer of mine when I was in the part of doing some tech work. Yeah. And I've seen how they get so stressed and they have to work, 18-hour days and and my way of working with energy it is different from yours, but it is that intent of how can we work together collectively so there is such a flow both this way personally from presence connected with me personally, but then how do we connect that with as this
with what we're doing, right? That's really good.
Oh dear whoa. So there's about 1,000 things I think I want to ask. And we're, we do need to end at some point here. I think I want to ask you if there's something that you could offer to our listeners that they could do right now. That they could do right now to begin this. And then I'm going to ask you about how they can connect with you.
Yeah. Here's the bitch of this, okay? It would be so easy if I was teaching in the individual threshold because everybody can do it by themselves.
Right.
Or they can listen to the download later, or they can read something. Do you know what I mean? They can ingest something.
Yes.
This is about showing up.
Yeah.
In a very particular way with another. Now, what they could do right now, just to feel some sense of oneness with us at least, is if they bring their awareness into my voice. So if you place your awareness in my voice, and and then all your listeners do that.
Mm-hmm.
For a moment, you get a sense of like, it's almost like instead of all the fractionalized subjective, for a minute, like we're all together at like one point.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you do that on Zoom, it's fascinating. I'll have people put it on gallery view.
Mm-hmm.
You see like, 25 or 100 people, and then tell them to bring their awareness into my voice, and you can feel the whole page of people. Something changes.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a good place to start. Now, obviously, they need to go deeper in the practice, but we're just not used to. I mean, you obviously love this because we're not used to taking the world into unitive spaces.
Mm-hmm.
How to maintain that, how to start with that, how to cultivate that, because that hasn't been what's been going on.
No, it's been the exact opposite.
And that is what's next. I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years, and even my friends who are in, famous authors and stuff like that, they just thought I was crazy. I'd start talking about it, they go, what? Like it didn't make any sense. And maybe I didn't explain it very well. I'm not sure. But, now there's we space starts to be a conversation, that there's a we space, there's a higher we, there's me to we, there's a little bit of that going on. Mm-hmm. And we're still at the nascent beginning.
Absolutely.
This will be what people will be doing in the next 5-10 years. Mm-hmm. Instead of individual work as much, people will be innovating in these different areas in probably all kinds of cool ways. So,
yeah. So how can people get in touch with you? What's the best place for them to find out about you?
Yeah. So I wrote a best-selling book called Evolutionary Relationships. And if they go to evolutionarycollective.com, they just go to my website, evolutionarycollective.com. On the front, it says, you can start here. Mm-hmm. If they click on that, it says it's a starter kit. And what it actually is part one of my book. Mm-hmm. It's part one of my book. And then for each of the 4 chapters, I've also written more with exercises and things that they can do so that they have a little bit of a scaffolding. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you and I are like, woo, we're excited, but it might be like, what, what are they talking about?
What the heck?
And so maybe not, but the having more of a sense of what is this subjective, intersubjective, what are we talking about? So those 4 chapters I do in the first one, the first lesson that they get, I talk about the difference between desire and longing and the power of that. The different power and how that relates to this. And people have enjoyed that. So there's that.
Okay. And I've done that and it's so worthwhile.
Oh, good. Okay.
I want to encourage people to do that because it is.
And then if they want to have a direct experience of like bringing, being on Zoom and me doing a workshop on this, there's a free workshop. I only do these every few months, but I am doing another one on the 5th. So February 5th.
Okay. If
they write to me at patricia@evolutionarycollective.com, I will send them the link.
Great. And
Patricia,
since I don't know exactly when this is going to get to air yet, if it's beyond that February date, do you know the next one yet?
No, just sign up for the starter kit. If they sign up for the starter kit, then we'll at least let them know when free opportunities to experience, because everything that I'm doing is about showing up and actually tasting this. Because otherwise, it's like love. Like you can't read. I mean, you could read about it, but you have to like show up and get kissed. It's like. So yeah.
You are such a pleasure.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia Albere, for gracing us with your presence and with what feels so much to be what is possible in the world. And that that moves me deeply.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing what you're doing and being who you are in the world.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be here with you. This was a very exciting conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
And thanks to all of you for being with us here today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Remember, you can join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. And sometimes you get to hear like really something so far out, it's really is what is next. And remember, you can find us also on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. So if you've enjoyed listening today, please leave us a review. That helps more people access the wisdom and the transformation. And for more about optimizing your own connection with your creative intelligence, find me, Laurie Seymour, over at thebacainstitute.com. Take the Creative Innovator quiz there now.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.